Hello and welcome everybody who wants to learn Battlerite. I'm here to show you some more obscure mechanics that are in the game, or some concepts that may not be very obvious to new players, just to help you guys out. Yeah, let's start. First thing, click your mouse wheel. As you can see, my camera is currently centered around my character, Pestilus, and there's nothing here, down here. You can't see any dummies. But I hit something. See, one is dead. That's not good. Like, you don't want to have enemies outside of your vision, because you can just get snuck upon. So yeah, click your mouse wheel. This will allow you to look around a little bit and actually see what you're aiming for. Mechanic number 2. Let's talk about how health works in this game a little bit. Now, as you can see, I have 5 blocks of HP on my HP bar. And if I go to this guy and let him deal some damage to me, you can see my HP bar is starting to shrink. Like, I can recover the black portion. See, I'm healing up. But the rest of it, there is no ability in the game to recover this max HP loss. The only way to regain that health is by picking up these orbs. They give 6 maximum HP each. It's by killing this middle orb. So this is why you always want to fight in the middle. Like, your goal is always to keep control of the middle orb and the green orbs, because look, the numbers may seem low, but they are very, very important. Another mechanic that I find works very differently in this game than it does in a lot of others is damage over time abilities that you can apply to people. So, for example, here you can see 3 dummies that are at 1 HP, and this one is at 500 HP. And if I apply a damage over time ability to all of them, these don't die. This one is still taking damage. 2. So yeah, damage over time abilities that you apply to a person, they do not kill, generally. There is one exception, and it's Pestilus. His ultimate is a damage over time ability, but it also kills. It's the only one in the game that does that. There are, however, other damage over time abilities that do kill. So, for example, if I hop on Lucy and I use my ultimate here, you can see it's ticking away and it can kill these dummies. They're not immune to this one. So if a damage over time ability, a dot, is on the ground, don't stay in it for too long or you will die. Another example of delayed kill is what I would call a damage after time ability. So, for example, Lucy's EX1 ability is the deadly injection. Bam, dead. See? It turns the health bar purple, and when it explodes, it doesn't follow the same logic as an applied dot, so it can still kill. There are other characters that have such damage after time abilities, and what's important to know is you can dodge that damage, which brings us to iframes. Now, iframes are abilities that give you a window of time when you cannot be hurt. So, for example, Lucy has her roll, which is a movement ability. It's actually very expensive to use. It's on a 15-second cooldown and it costs 25% energy, but I'm using hacks, if you haven't noticed yet. Anyway, this ability lets me dodge incoming projectiles. I'm immortal during the roll. As you can see, I do not take damage from this little dude. So, if you have a damage after time ability applied to you, and you roll at the moment of its explosion, you can actually dodge the damage. So, for example, if I time it like this, I would take damage. If I time it like this, I wouldn't take damage. It's kind of hard to demonstrate when I'm alone. I'm gonna try to edit a clip into this video, maybe you can see it, I don't know. Now, the more perceptive of you may have noticed that I mentioned an EX ability. These are the types of abilities that you don't see on the on the skill bar unless you hold down the modifier key. It's by default the left shift, and you can see two new abilities appeared. They both take 25% damage, and these are actually very important to learn, because in the case of character like Paloma, the only way she can heal herself is through other side or hitting a teammate. But if there aren't any teammates around, other side is like a 12-second cooldown, so the only way to heal yourself is to use the X abilities. So for example, her normal space works like this. You cast it, you can recast it to teleport to the target, and her EX ability switches places with your target and heals you. And if the target is a teammate, it heals you both. And her Q is, you've seen this one before, spell block. And the EX is a spell block with a 10 damage, and it also heals you. I cannot stress how important EX abilities are, because in some cases you don't even want to use your ultimate. In other cases, an EX ability can save you a lot of damage, like for example with Thea. Her Q is a knockback, it's nothing special, it just knocks people back that are close to you, but the EX version becomes an iframe. And we talked about iframes already, they're important to mitigate damage. Now, while we're on the topic of damage mitigation, there is one more type of ability that is important to know. It's called a counter. It's on the Q. If a character has it, it's gonna be the Q ability. And the way it works is it negates incoming projectiles. See? I didn't take damage from the first one and the third one. I can just eat that projectile. The counter will absorb one attack most of the time. There is Freya counter which can absorb multiple, but yeah. As long as that attack is single target or piercing or cleave. So for example, Freya's R, which you can see is an arc, it would still trigger counters despite being area of effect. There are others. Actually, let me just put this up. Anything that's green will trigger counters, anything that's red is not gonna trigger counters, and anything that's yellow will trigger counters under certain circumstances. I didn't make the list, I did tweak it a little bit, but yeah, it's good enough, I think. Now, the rest of the game is pretty self-explanatory, and it works like most other RPG games with RPG elements, whatever, except this one has a thing called spell block. I haven't seen it in any other game, so I want to talk about it a little bit. Basically how it works is it applies this debuff, you can see spell block, and it's very short. Now, the reason I think it's important is because if you cast anything during the spell block, it will trigger a secondary effect. In Paloma's case, this is the character, it will trigger a panic. So it's basically like crowd control that offers counterplay. So if you do nothing while the spell block is on you, you will suffer no additional consequences. So just, you know, chill. The last mechanic that I want to talk about, but certainly not the least, is cancel casting. The way it works is very simple. There is a cancel button. It's C by default, and you can use it to cancel any ability. As you can see, this should have a cooldown of 6 seconds, and I start casting it and I cancel, and it goes on a global cooldown of 1 second. So this is important for many different reasons. For starters, you can use this to bait out counters, to bait out invulnerability frames that we talked about. It can be used to, for example, cancel other side quicker. No, instead of running around for, how long did it last? 1.8 seconds doing nothing. You can cancel it immediately and get the heal off and start attacking again. You can use it on characters that have a shield. This is very useful, for example, for Rukan. As you can see, he has a shield and it lasts for 1.5 seconds. And its effect is, if I absorb a projectile, it recharges my weapon. But I cannot use my weapon while the shield is up. So instead of waiting for 1.5 seconds for the shield to basically go down, I can cancel it early and attack immediately. It also is very useful if, well, say you're on a character like Rukan who has a weapon charge and you're attacking someone, but you notice in time, you react in time. This won't happen a lot, but it does happen, and it's useful to know. Like, you see that you're not in range of the enemy you're attacking, and you realize it, and you can cancel and save your charge. Then you do not have to wait for the 8 seconds or however, 8 seconds for the weapon to recharge. You can just cancel mid animation and reposition and attack again, still having a full charge. Alright, that about covers the mechanics I wanted to talk about. Now let's talk a little bit more about the concepts that only really apply to this game, well, to my knowledge. For starters, there are no healers in this game, there are only supports. Like Lucy is one of them, and as an example, here's a dummy, I'm gonna try to keep it alive, and if I just play like a heal bot, I cannot do it. You see, I run out of charges, of healing charges, and the dummy is gonna die. Because I can't keep up with this little thing that's dealing 15 damage a second. That's laughable damage. And yeah, I can't keep up. So supports in this game, they don't protect their teammates only by healing. It is very important that they also attack. In fact, most healers, like when you look at a scoreboard at the end of a round, if a support doesn't have about a 1-to-1 ratio for damage and protection done, so for example, if you have 400 protection score, you should have around 400 damage as well. The only exception to this is Blossom, because she's broken and stupid, and yeah, she can have a ratio of like 1-to-3, so for example 400 damage and she will have 1200 healing, and that's perfectly normal for her. But for other supports, 1-to-1 is it's about expected. There are some minor differences, but yeah. So that's supports. Now, since supports can't be heal bots in this game, damage dealers shouldn't be played as meat shields. Like, you cannot take all the damage, you have to mitigate it, and you do it by using the things that we talked about. Counters, iframes, you use crowd control, just anything you can mitigate the damage, anything you can do. So for example, as I said before, this dude deals 15 damage a second, but here I am standing in front of it for a solid, I don't know, 10 at least, and I've taken how much damage? Let's check. 12, and 6, so yeah, that's 30 damage in 10 seconds. It should have been 150. Point is, the next time you're gonna play this game and think about well, you will want to blame your healer for not keeping your health up. And just think about how much damage you took and how much damage you dodged. And the next time a damage dealer blames you for playing support poorly, for not keeping them alive, think about how much damage you dealt, how much pressure you put out on the opponent, so they couldn't hurt your damage dealer, so they would want to heal themselves or run away or whatever. It's a pretty unique concept, I think, and yeah, not a lot of new players get it. Speaking of poor performance, there's this unwritten rule in Battlerite. I mean, it only makes sense. When you look at any character's abilities, doesn't matter which ones, they all have their most damaging ability on their left click. So the first ability here is the one that should be used to deal the most damage. If you, at the end of a round, open your scoreboard and you see that you dealt with your, I don't know, right click more damage than with your left click, you played poorly. Like, even if you won the round, you didn't win because you did good, you just did less bad than the enemy, which, you know, if the enemy is dog shit, it's not really comforting to know that you're a little bit less dog shit. So yeah, don't get drawn in too much by these big numbers like, oh my god, 16, 18 damage 3 times, that's a lot. Yeah, no, this 15 damage ability is gonna deal more, should deal more over the course of a round on any character ever, period. So yeah, that's my tutorial plus video. If you liked it, thank you. Yeah, share with some new players, hopefully it will help them. And yeah, bye.